UGA is ranked what in the preseason polls? Next on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. I am Daniel. Happy to have you along for the ride today. Thanks so much for being an everydayer, for being with us each and every day. Thanks for being a first listener. We really appreciate you guys. You guys are the reason that this podcast goes. And thanks for being a loyal third segment listener, part of the 199. Some of you have been listening to this show, watching the show on YouTube for a long time. We appreciate all of the comments. We appreciate all of the follows. We appreciate all of the emails and the kind words on Twitter. You can follow us at Dawgs Podcast. You can send us an email, lockedonbulldogs@gmail.com. Happy to have you along for the ride. And guys, we are getting so fired up for the 2025 football season. It's going to be a great season. It's going to be the best in the history of the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. Excited for all the things that we have planned, excited for all that we have to talk about, and excited to watch this Georgia football team as they take the field in just over a month at the time of this recording. I mean, really, we're like 5 weeks away from game week here at the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. And, man, could not be more excited about it. We still got a little bit of offseason left, but there's plenty to talk about. So just as a scheduling update before we jump into the context of this episode, which is the Phil Steele preseason rankings, which are insane. As a programming note, we are going to get to SEC Media Days and cover everything that Kirby Smart had to say, that Gunnar Stockton had to say, all of that. We're going to discuss all of those things and the happenings down in Atlanta. Clint and I will be back later on this week, maybe next week, to talk about all of those things. And so make sure that you stay tuned for all of that. We will also get to your questions. If you've been sending us questions via email, lockedonbulldogs@gmail.com. We'll get to your upcoming questions as well. And so if you have more questions or things that you want us to cover, please do send us an email and let us know things that you want us to cover. Pretty soon, we're not going to be able to open the mailbag anymore because we're going to have too much on-season content to discuss. And so now's your chance to get in your off-season questions for these last couple of weeks, because fall camp is about to start. And then right around the corner, as I said, is the 2025 college football season. Speaking of the 2025 college football season, a big narrative in this offseason has been the disrespect that Georgia is getting. Now, many of you agree that Georgia's being disrespected in the media. By the way, I'm not even saying that that's a bad thing. I think it's good for Georgia that the media is saying this. There are a few of you that completely deny that Georgia is being disrespected. And then there are a few of you that think Georgia is rightfully being disrespected because they're actually not going to be that good. See, it's funny how there's a whole group of people that will argue there is no such thing as Georgia being disrespected. And then there's another group of people who will argue the exact opposite point, which is that Georgia is being talked about exactly the way that I say they're being talked about, but they deserve to be talked about exactly the way that I am seeing them be talked about. So we're not harping on this because this is a woe is Georgia podcast. This is just it is an interesting observation point that the most dominant team in the last 5 years of college football, without exception, without question, is largely by the media being looked at as coming off of a really down year, right? I heard a national college football show. I'm not going to name the name of the show, but a very popular national college football show preview the 2025 season. And one of the big storylines for them in the 2025 season is how will Georgia bounce back from the 2024 season that they have? Will Georgia be able to bounce back? Okay, I know that we got beat in the first round, in the first game that we played, not the first round, in the first game that we played in the college football playoff. I know that Georgia lost to Notre Dame because they gave up a kick return for a touchdown, which was Gunnar Stockton's fault. We all know that. All of you saw it, want to tell me, oh, you saw how Gunnar played in the bowl game. That's why he's being disrespected, because he was terrible in the bowl game. He did give up a kick return for a touchdown. I will grant you that. That's the big storyline, is Georgia's going to bounce back. Well, did Georgia win the SEC last year? Did Georgia finish the regular season as the number 2 overall seed in the college football playoff, the number 2 team in the country last year? Yes. Yeah, I think they did. I think that they did. Did Georgia beat Texas twice, win an SEC, like all these? Okay, I get that Georgia didn't have its best year last year. I'm fully on record as saying the Georgia defense was soft last year, as saying the Georgia offense was led by a quarterback that didn't know how to throw the ball to his teammates. I get that there were a lot of things that Georgia needs to fix and improve on going into the next season. But again, the narrative is that Georgia has just dropped off the face of the, how are they going to bounce back? I haven't heard anybody say, how is Alabama going to bounce back from actually missing the playoff, but I digress. Before we get into the Phil Steele stuff, though, let me open by saying this. I recognize that this is not the complete narrative. And so we're going to talk about a set of rankings. But for example, Sports Illustrated came out with their preseason top 25. They have Georgia at number 2. Georgia is being respected either too much, depending on your view of them, or just right, if you have a different view of them. Georgia is getting a lot of respect in a lot of other polls, but that's sort of the point of this whole discussion and this whole narrative, is that there is no consensus about Georgia this year. In the mind of the general public, could we all just agree on this point? In the mind of the general public, there is a lot of ambiguity about how good Georgia is going to be in 2025. And that, to me, is the interesting piece of this narrative, because again, consistently, year in and year out for the last 5 years, Georgia has been by far the best and most dominant team in all of college football. And now all of a sudden, there is a large percentage of the population that believes that the perception is, at least, that is going to fall off. Maybe it fell off last year and it's going to continue this year. Maybe it was not up to par last year and it's going to take another step back this year. That's the general consensus among the public, that Georgia is no longer the measuring stick, the standard of college football. And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. We'll get into it in a bit. So we're going to jump into this Phil Steele preseason rankings. We're talking about where Georgia's ranked. We're talking about where some other teams are ranked, and we're going to give my thoughts on that. All of that and a bit more coming up right after these. But first, I want to talk with you about our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook is the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. Summer sports are in full swing. It's the Open Championship this weekend, if you want to bet on that. If you're watching baseball, there's tons of stuff that's up live and ready for you to wager on right now on FanDuel. But also, preseason lines are out for college football. Season win total lines are out. Clint and I are going to do a preseason locks, a season win total locks episode, where we're going to get into all of that conversation. FanDuel is the place that you want to go to. If you're already following the action, why not make it more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel lately to track all my favorite matchups. The app keeps me up to date with the daily promotions. They're always giving me new and fun ways to bet. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. So pick a sure thing. Pick something that you know is going to cash. Wager as little as $5 on it. If you win, you get $150. You get that $5 back, plus whatever you win for the bet, plus $150 in bonus bets. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so let's jump into these Phil Steele preseason rankings. Listen, you guys know who Phil Steele is. He has been a long time pundit of college football. He's known for his analytics. He's known for his preseason magazine. He has long since been one of these voices in college football, and a great place, honestly, to go to look at not just the top teams in college football, but all the teams in college football. He kind of breaks everything down, does so very analytically, and he has put out his preseason rankings. And so I want to just dive into them, and let's start with Georgia. Georgia in this preseason rankings is all the way down at 7, number 7 in the country in the preseason. Now that alone, again, if you're going to be a person that is going to argue me that Georgia's not being disrespected, I understand that some schools would be thrilled to be ranked number 7. And I understand that preseason rankings do not matter. It has long since been and continues to be the position of this podcast that preseason rankings don't matter. Phil Steele's preseason rankings especially do not matter. It has nothing to do with the outcomes of any of these games. That's not what's being said. Simply what's being said is that Georgia is thought to be down, and Kirby Smart is going to love that. He's going to use it as ammunition. It's only going to fire up this Georgia team. You can believe that all of this is posted on the bulletin board of the locker room. There's no way locker rooms still have bulletin boards, by the way, but you can believe that this is on the home screen of every one of these student athletes. Now, there's kind of two groups of teams that I want to compare Georgia to as we look at why they are ranked 7 and why I think that that's a ridiculous place for them to be ranked. The first group of teams is the top, where Georgia should be. And I'm not even going to say that Georgia should be the number 1 team in the country in the preseason. So let's just look at the top 5. I think it is ridiculous to have a preseason rankings and not have Georgia in your top 5. Again, Sports Illustrated has them at 2. I saw On3 has them at 4. I think USA Today has them right in that mix. I'm not sure. So there are rankings where they're, I think, slotted in rightly. And I wouldn't even argue that Georgia should be ranked the number 1 team in the country in the preseason. But if you look at that top 5, and let's just start comparing these teams to Georgia. Phil Steele has Penn State at number 1. Now, Penn State returns their quarterback. They return a lot on offense. And they kind of came on last year and proved they can get it done. They do belong in the conversation. They do have like the ability to potentially compete with the big boys in college football. They bring a lot back. If you're high on Penn State, that's fine. I don't really hate it. Notre Dame at number 2. Now, some people are going to say, well, Georgia beat Notre Dame in the last game of the last season, or Notre Dame beat Georgia, in the last game of last season. And so, of course, they should be ranked higher. A lot of people think Georgia has questions at quarterback. I think Notre Dame's got some real questions at quarterback. Riley Leonard is gone, and their defensive coordinator is gone. And so you look at continuity on the coaching staff, Notre Dame doesn't have it. You look at continuity at quarterback, Notre Dame doesn't have it. And so how will Notre Dame fare? It's hard for me to get to a place where you're like, yeah, they're definitely ahead of Georgia. Texas, number 3. Our position on Arch Manning is widely known at this point. I'm not going to discuss it. There's no need for us to elaborate on it. Arch Manning has done categorically less than Gunnar Stockton at all phases of his career so far. And so why would I believe that he's better than Gunnar Stockton? He has done nothing ever in his life to prove that he's better than Gunnar Stockton. So why would I believe that he is better than Gunnar Stockton? Alabama at number 4, quarterback concerns. Yep. Alabama's got massive quarterback concerns. Might as well spill that over to number 5, Ohio State. Quarterback concerns? Yeah. Ohio State's got a brand new guy. Now, he's a former 5-star recruit. We've never seen a former 5-star recruit underperform at quarterback, have we? There's no chance that a former 5-star recruit, Julian Sayin, could possibly underperform at quarterback, is it? Ohio State is pinning all of their hopes on a guy that has never taken a snap in college football. Say what you will about the way Gunnar Stockton performed in the bowl game. Say what you will about the way Gunnar Stockton performed in the second half of the SEC championship game when he brought Georgia back from a deficit and caused them to win the game. You could say what you will about that, but I'll tell you, he's done a lot more to prove to me that he's ready to lead a championship team than Alabama's quarterback has, than Ohio State's quarterback has. And so there's your top five. Someone tell me in the comments, even the Texas fans. And by the way, Texas fans are coming strong in the comments. I wouldn't think that we'd have much to say if I was a Texas fan, not to a Georgia fan. Like, talk to somebody else, somebody that you've beaten this decade. Like, talk to somebody else that post Sam Ehlinger you've had any success against ever. Like, don't Texas fans, come on. But Texas fans are feeling themselves. They do not like that you disrespect the generational talent that couldn't beat out Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. But I don't see how you can make a definitive case that Georgia is behind any of these teams. Now, maybe you would say, well, Georgia's not necessarily ahead of some of these. Penn State, Georgia's not necessarily ahead of them. Like, fine. That's fine. But I think somewhere in that 3 to 4 range, returning so much talent on the defensive side of the ball, what they were able to do in the transfer portal, which I think never gets talked about when Georgia does make moves in the transfer portal and brings in the leading touchdown scorer on Texas A&M last year and former 5-star wide receiver from USC. Like, I'm not hearing anybody mentioning Georgia's haul in the transfer portal because we didn't sign 42 guys in the transfer portal the way that Ole Miss did. But I don't see how you've got Georgia outside of that 3 to 4 range, but that's fine. To me, it's not the top 5 that makes me upset when I look at this rankings. To me, it's the caliber of team and the group of team that Georgia is ranked right alongside. Okay? Like right in line with who is Phil Steele decided is basically the same team as Georgia. Let's talk about that right after these. So we mentioned the top 5 earlier: Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, Alabama, Ohio State. Look, even if you told me that all 5 of those teams are better than Georgia, I'd say you can't prove it. But even if you said you can't prove Georgia's better than any of those teams, first of all, I think I can. I think they have less questions than several of those teams. I think they should be ranked somewhere in there. That's not the most upsetting part. The most upsetting part is this: Georgia's ranked 7. So let me give you the rest of the top 10. These are the schools that Phil Steele believes are basically the same as Georgia. Do you understand that? 6, 8, 9, and 10. These are the schools that Phil Steele says Georgia is right in the jumble with. Okay? Number 6, the Clemson Tigers. When are we going to learn about Cade Klubnik? I have said a lot of unkind things about Arch Manning. But to be fair, Arch Manning, he's been ridiculously bad against Georgia in the handful of snaps that Steve Sarkisian was brave enough to give him. But Arch Manning has never consistently been poor when playing because he's never been able to earn playing time. But Cade Klubnik is Cade Klubnik. Like, you got about 3 games early in his career when Cade Klubnik looked like he was going to be the next great Clemson quarterback, the next Trevor Lawrence. And then Cade Klubnik has looked more like DJ Uiagalelei than he has Trevor Lawrence. And I don't have to tell Clemson fans that's a huge problem. Phil Maffa is gone. There's a lot of pieces on that Clemson defense that are gone. people are really high on Clemson. Clemson fans this year are really high on Clemson. Really? Like, really? Clemson right there with Georgia? Okay. How about number 8? The team right behind Georgia. Oklahoma. Oklahoma, by the way, was terrible last year. They were awful. Now, they had a tough schedule in the SEC, and they got it handed to them consistently. And then Oklahoma goes out, and they hire Washington State's offensive coordinator, and they bring in John Mateer in the transfer portal. So that's great. They bring in a reasonably talented quarterback, and they bring in a well thought of offensive coordinator. Great. So let's talk about Washington State, shall we? A team that went 8-5 last year. A team that lost to New Mexico, the New Mexico Lobos. A team that lost to Wyoming. A team that lost their bowl game to Syracuse. A team that lost to Oregon State. John Mateer might be awesome. He might be awesome. But Pac-12 football is not a measuring stick by which we will... You can have John Mateer's entire season last year. I'll take Gunnar Stockton playing 6 quarters against the Texas defense and the Notre Dame defense. I'll take it. I'll take that any day of the week. There is a lot of steam on Oklahoma. And listen, I think Oklahoma is a sneaky dark horse in the SEC. But preseason for them to be number 8. Number 9, Texas A&M. Now, I'm on record as saying this is the year that I think Texas A&M is not getting talked about enough. Every other year, Texas A&M gets a lot of shine in the preseason, and they disappoint. I think Marcel Reed is a gifted quarterback. He can't throw the ball, but I think he's a gifted quarterback. Like, I think if he learns to be accurate in the intermediate game, if he learns how to process and make decisions a little bit quicker, you know he's got the athleticism. He can throw the deep ball. I think Texas A&M is a dangerous team in the SEC. But again, what about the roster composition is going to lead you to believe that in the preseason, this team should be ranked 9th in the country, that this team is even with Georgia? And then I'll say the same thing about number 10, which is another SEC school, and is Florida. Guys, do I think Florida is going to be better this year? Yes, I absolutely do. Do I think that their quarterback is for real? Yes, I do think their quarterback is for real. I think Tennessee fans convinced themselves that Nico was the best young quarterback in the SEC last year. And Florida fans probably knew all along. Billy Napier was too big of an idiot to not start him from the very first game of the season last year. It required an injury to a bona fide, a career clipboard holder is who Billy Napier wanted to go with. Kirby Smart gets a lot of heat for making ridiculously dumb quarterback decisions, but Billy Napier, an all-timer, required a season-ending injury to the 9th-year senior that he wanted to play in order to get the most exciting young quarterback in DJ Lagway in the SEC on the field. But I think DJ Lagway is good. Florida's got a great freshman incoming wide receiver. I can't remember the kid's name, but he's big. He's physical. He's got a chance to burst onto the scene. I think Florida's offense could be really good this year. I think they could be really good this year. But explain to me what Georgia's done to make you think that gap between them, who finished the season number 2 in the country, and Florida has been reduced to nothing. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying Florida shouldn't be ranked fairly highly. What I'm saying is that to put them in the same grouping as Georgia in the preseason, I think it betrays how you feel about. You could say whatever you want about how you feel about Georgia, right? And again, just back to the last episode where I talked, like Greg McElroy, he'll tell you Georgia's going to make the playoff, but they have a bottom half of the conference offense and a bottom half of the conference defense. You can say at the end of the day, like, Georgia's going to make the playoff because intuitively they are going to make the playoff. Well, you know what that means? That means they're better than you're giving them credit for. That means they're better than the preseason number 7 overall team in the country. That means that some of these teams that might surprise you this year, that's fine. They shouldn't be ranked right behind Georgia, who I would argue is a sure thing to be really good. Now, are they going to be national championship good? I think that remains to be seen. I really do. Are they going to be college football playoff good? Somebody in the comments bet me that Georgia's not going to make the college football playoff. That's what I want to hear, because that's the way that they're being talked about right now, is that they're kind of right on that line. Because, 12 teams make the playoff, but there's going to be some surprise teams from the bottom, that are going to find their way up there. The teams at the top, that they're going to be in. That's where Georgia should be. In my mind, that is a fair valuation of Georgia. Are they a national championship good? I don't know. Don't rank them number 1 or number 2 if you don't want to. Put them at 4. Put them at 5. But when you have Georgia down in a group of teams with Clemson, Texas A&M, Florida, and Oklahoma, I just don't, that ain't it, y'all. Like that, I promise you, that's not it. That's not where Georgia belongs. Again, Clint and I will be back later in the week talking about SEC Media Days, talking about our thoughts in the upcoming season. We got a couple of more preseason games we're going to play, things we want to talk about. Send us an email, lockedonbulldogs@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter @DawgsPodcast with stuff that you want us to talk about, and we will talk to you guys next time.